There's no one magical investment or contract or procedure, anything that's going to fix your issue if you're not saving.
Save until it hurts. But if you retire at 50 and you try to take out 4%, you're going to be going back to work at some point as a barista or in Walmart. Those are your choices.
How do I know if I'm saving enough for retirement?
I'm near retirement age and have about $1.5 million in my 401k.
My current salary is $200,000 and I'm divorced.
Great question, which I really don't have all the details to answer, but I will do my best. If your current salary is around $200,000 and you're maxing out your 401k, I would probably ballpark guess your take-home income's around 10 or 11 a month. That's the kind of lifestyle you're used to living. So that's a question I always ask clients is what is your take-home income now? And do you expect the same kind of lifestyle in retirement?
Do you know what your costs are? You can't imagine the number of times I'll talk with people and, how much does it cost you to live? Man, I don't know. Are you cash flow neutral? Yeah, I'm cash flow neutral. Well, how much do you have coming in? I'm not quite sure.
What's enough? I try and do it from a goal-based perspective that effectively enough is relative to your needs. There's always going to be the fixed cost, basic cost of living, fun stuff, taxes, health insurance, parent support, child support. Let's find out what your monthly expenses is. I don't like budgets, but I need to know what your outflow is because then effectively I can reverse engineer what's the pile of money you need to sustain that wealth over your lifetime.
What are the expenses that are going to fall off or go away? Do you have a mortgage now that is almost paid off, so you won't have a mortgage in retirement? But then I explain it's just the principal and interest portion that you won't have. You will always have taxes and insurance, but at least we can have that mortgage payment, the PI portion, fall off. I also ask if they have other debt they're paying off, like an auto loan or any credit cards or student loans. We'd need to know what income sources you have.
1.5 million sounds like a great number. A lot of times it's difficult for people to quantify larger numbers. But until you start to figure out what your expenses are, when you are going to be retiring and how long you're going to need to have that money last, it could be a little bit more of a cold shower than you realize. I try to reframe that number in client meetings to help people understand how long that amount of money needs to potentially last so that they can have the retirement that they want rather than the one that they're stuck with because they didn't make some even more difficult decisions early on.
I can't go to the grocery store and not spend $200. My son used to go through 1 bag of chips a week and he goes through 2 and I swear those chip bags are smaller. So my grocery bill has doubled in the past 5 years. So when we're thinking about $1.5 million being a lot, well, we also have to have the context of inflation that things are a lot more expensive now. And if we have 2-3 decades for that money to last, we're gonna continue to see inflation happen. So it's really important to actually think about your withdrawal rate. How much are you taking out of that 1.5 million? Can we make it last? People retiring these days, we have to plan for 3 decades plus. It's gone are the days of retirement at 65 and die by 70. I mean, we have to plan for a lot of years to make that money last. And that's a lot of clients' biggest fears is they say, I am so worried about running out of money. I do have some clients that say, this is why I saved it, I want to spend it, I don't want to give it to my kids, and then we can have maybe a slightly higher of a withdrawal rate, but I still, as a planner, I need to make sure they don't run out too quickly.
When thinking about what $1.5 million means, I really try to use dirty math. So I always like to use the 4% as a rule. I don't like it in general, but I think it's an easy number to go. If you need to live on, for example, $50,000 a year, 4% really means 50,000 times 25. So effectively, that's 1.25 million. So in this case, this person should be sufficient if that's their number. But what I found is I try to add in more layers because as people think about their expenses, they forget about the things that they're not paying for now. And most of that is fun and travel. Retirement is 365 days of freedom. I want you to paint me the picture of your bucket list. What are the things you're gonna do day one? Let me add those layers in because now if it's $50,000 to $75,000, that 4% or 25 is a bigger number.
You need to save as much as you can for as long as you can. There's no one magical investment or contract or procedure, anything that's gonna fix your issue if you're not saving. When you think about cash flow plans, there's kind of 2 levers. One lever is how much money you need. The other lever is when you're gonna need that money. How much do you think is going to be coming to you with Social Security? Are you going to be working part-time? Do you have any sort of inheritance coming in? Will you have any sort of pension?
Social Security will most likely be there for you, and I would guess with the salary you're making, your Social Security will be ballpark $3,000 a month, in that range. So if you want 11 and you have 3 from Social Security, that's 8 you have to come up with. $8,000 a month that your own money has to support. If you don't have any kind of rental income and if you don't have any pension, your 401k needs to support that $8,000 a month. $8,000 a month is, how much is that a year? I swear I'm good at math as a financial planner. Is $96,000 a year? If you're to pull out $96,000 a year from 1.5 million, that's a pretty high withdrawal rate for it to be sustainable. As a financial planner, I'd say, well, maybe you don't have enough.
The younger you retire, the bigger that pile has to last over time, right? And so when I think about that person who retires at 65, the 4% rule, dirty math, is supposed to last 25 years. That's 90. For the vast majority of people, that's good. But if you retire at 50 and you try to take out 4%, you're going to be going back to work at some point as a barista or in Walmart. Those are your choices, right? And having those difficult conversations early really sets the tone on, if that's not how you want your retirement to go, let's figure out a way to do this together. And it may hurt, it may sting. Are you willing to work longer? Can you save more? Are you willing to be more aggressive? You have a lot more control than people realize, but just saying 65, 1.5 million, that's not enough to understand who you really are.
Now, you're divorced, so in couples, you have the potential for 2 Social Security benefits, right? If you're divorced, you just have the one.
Really, when I'm looking at someone who's divorced, I have to think about the recency of the divorce. So if they've been recently divorced, it's a steeper learning curve because they have to figure out who this new person is and what their goals are. Because effectively, as a couple, you have some redundancy of cost. You may have 2 sets of Social Securities and things like that. So when I'm dealing with somebody who's single or divorced, I have to start talking in, we may have to add in some assumptive amount of caregiver, because typically your first caregiver is your spouse. But if you don't have a spouse, that's a cost item that we have to have in. And I try to have sometimes a morbid conversation going, this may be a reality that I'd rather over plan and have you prove me wrong, because that may be a reality.
We build these baseline strategies, assuming that if you want to retire by 65 and you've got 2 million to retire, trying to get you into your mid to late 90s. There's nothing wrong with being old. There's nothing wrong with being poor. When you're old and poor, you can't make one wrong decision ever, right? The stakes are too high. You don't have the years to be able to regroup and fix those problems.
I've been maxing out my 401k for the last decade or so, but I didn't start contributing until I was in my early 30s. I'm 55 now.
What else should I be doing to ensure I can retire by the time I'm 67?
How much can I expect to get from Social Security?
That's a fantastic question. I think the first thing you need to do is to go onto the Social Security Administration's website, get a copy of your statement. In many circumstances, people have never seen their statement, but you want to see what some recent figures look like. Now, this begs additional questions because clients often want to know, will Social Security be there? The reality is, we think it'll be there to some extent. We just don't know if it's going to be there in its full capacity.
So if you're 55 now, Social Security will probably be there, just not in its entirety. Because in about 10 years from now, the trust fund will be depleted. But when that trust fund runs out, current taxpayer revenue coming in can pay about 75% of your benefit.
How much of your income is this covering? Is it 20%? Is it 100%? How do we supplement your income beginning at 67? And if you're not there yet, are you okay working slightly longer in order to build the wealth that can make it sustainable? Just working 1 or 2 years longer and even delaying Social Security 1 or 2 years longer makes a big difference for most people. And having that conversation now with today's 55-year-old, going, okay, if we do 68 versus 67, it doesn't feel like a death sentence. It's easier to just move it 1 year instead of at 66. I have bad news for you. You have to wait 1 more year longer than you thought.
When we're thinking about what else we can be doing to contribute towards your retirement success, we need to closely examine what we're doing right now. So the first step is to maximize your 401k. Huge mistake I see is clients will tell me they're maxing out their 401k, only to realize what they mean is they are contributing enough to get a match from their employer. They don't realize that they can contribute far beyond what the match is. So we want to make sure that we know exactly how much we can contribute to various retirement accounts. That could be the maximum in the 401k. It could be catch-up contributions. We've seen starting in 2025 with Secure Act 2.0, there's even further catch-up contributions if you're between ages 60 and 63. So we want to make sure that we're maximizing every opportunity we can.
If you're married filing jointly, and if your income's under $230,000, you can contribute to a Roth IRA. And I love Roth IRAs. They grow tax-free, come out tax-free, and there's no required minimum distributions on them. A lot of clients also like to have a brokerage type of an account. So a non-retirement account where if you invest 10 grand and it grows to 12, you're going to pay taxes on the 2 that it grew, but you can use it before 59 and a half. You can use it for the middle of the life type stuff or for a car if you need. But if you're already maxing out your 401k, and if you can or cannot contribute to a Roth IRA, that next bucket would be a brokerage account. And there's no contribution limits. You can save as much as you can in that. And then use that bucket of money as well. So then when you get to retirement, you have the different buckets to draw from. Your 401k and your IRA, that's all pre-tax, that it's taxed when you take money out. You have the Roth bucket if you need to stay in a low tax bracket, maybe to qualify for premium tax credits, for example, those healthcare subsidies. You can kind of control your income. And when you also pull from a brokerage account, that's not taxed as income. So having those different buckets just gives you a little bit more control when you get to retirement age.
Quite frankly, we like to tell people, save until it hurts. If you can afford, getting an appetizer when you're out at dinner, maybe you save so much that you can only afford the entree, right? I joke when I say that, but I'm also partially serious. We want to save until it hurts.
My advice to clients getting close to retirement that are maybe nervous or panicking about the political environment or the geopolitical environment, everything that's going on in the world, gosh, we could talk forever about that, is to focus on their own financial plan. So every client of mine has a customized personal financial plan that has their own goals, their own expenses, the needs and the wants that are in there. And then we take into account any of the what-if scenarios that could happen. What if inflation is higher than typical? What if we see terrible markets? What if our timing was awful and you're drawing from a portfolio right when we see a recession or a big market drawdown? What if your pension is cut? What if Social Security is cut? Any of those things that could happen that we hope doesn't, we make sure that the plan still works even if that happens. So that's how you stress test a plan. That's how you make sure that they can be confident and be in control and make sure that their plan will still work. I think it helps them sleep better at night to know that any of those what-if scenarios, if it does happen, they still won't run out of money.
What I'm seeing a lot when I'm talking to my clients around 55, they're apt to be the most scared. They're seeing that train coming down the track and they're very fearful. They're thinking they haven't saved enough, the market's going to be in free fall. What I try to do is I try and do a level set. I try to go, let's do a deep dive on what your expenses are. Let's talk about your longevity. Let's talk about your taxes. Let's talk about how insurance are going to work. Because what I found is by showing them that the numbers do work well, it takes a lot of that fear out of it. And in my experience, fear makes people do emotional things at the wrong possible time.